You guys are actually in this in the frame together, which is awesome. It's not split
Oh,
screen.
we're quarantining together to work on a new little project where we're us and our producer, the three of us are the whole cast and crew pretty much. So
Are you getting tired of each other or no at this point?
it's just nice to. I mean, it's funny. We've been working on this movie now for we're almost on week 3 and the
Wow.
process of developing it for a lot longer. Um, and it's just honestly, it's been really exhilarating just to figure out a way to make something with your friends. It's probably the best time I've had since since the whole lockdown.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I like the positive take on it. Where are you currently at?
We're just in Los Angeles in Justin's apartment.
There you go. Well, good.
I live right beneath him. So.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
That makes it okay. That explains it. That makes it.
We're going back to set, which is down there in a few hours. So.
Yeah, long trip there. I'm excited to talk to you guys. I mean, this movie, was this a long time coming for you guys? Because you guys worked as actors in a sense and together on previous things. How did, first of all, the inception of this idea come about? Because this movie really, I feel like it's like a perfectly made soup with like a bunch of ingredients you didn't expect in it, and it comes out tasting a lot better than going into it. You don't know what to expect. Tell me how this movie kind of came about for both of you, and just how did you even delegate? Like Aaron, you did the cinematography and the directing, and you didn't do the writing in a sense. Tell me how you guys kind of navigated the whole aspect and just the concept from it.
So as 2015, when the first draft of the script was written, and we had done 2 movies at that point. We did a movie called Resolution and a movie called Spring. And for some reason after Spring, we just had like a really long dry spell where we just literally couldn't get like anything made of our own, and we were just taking gigs to pay the rent, keep the lights on. Yep. And we were having lunch on one of those gigs one day, and just started talking about this idea of basically like, hey, what if there were essentially a drug that would put you into an altered state that you would see time as Einstein described it, whereas like if time in actuality is that it's more like the past, present, future happening simultaneously. What if there's something that could alter your state and break it down so you stop seeing time as linear and sequential and you saw it that way? And it was like, yeah, it was probably escapism conversation from a job we really didn't want to be doing. and then as far as how we break it down, I mean, we've been working together for a decade now, and we don't really break it down. Like, yes, like in a perfect world, it would just say a film by Moorhead and Benson, and that's the only credits we get, and then it's all of our other collaborators, because we're just he's very heavily involved in the cinematography. I'm very heavily involved in the writing. But it's not like, hey, this door is shut. You may knock, and maybe we will let you in. It's not like that at all. It's that when you're not providing the studio definition of a director, which is you show up to set, you give a bunch of answers to yes or no questions, and you go home. When you are more under the umbrella of filmmaker, where there's a lot of things to get done, and they all must get done. Then you just kind of split it up in that way, but you also help each other with it. We like to just kind of say that we're both filmmakers more than we're co-directors.
Yeah, which is cool because your friendship literally kind of makes it such an easy collaboration. There's no really ego probably involved or anything. You just kind of do what needs to be done to get the project done.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, there's us and there's a lot of other collaborators we work with, and we're really lucky that there's not that. Oddly, in this business where it happens a lot, there's not a lot of ego. Is not the thing that's ever an issue. Yeah,
that's important. Did you guys ever, when you're coming up the concept, obviously this story, the kind of the futuristic time travel goes in a past. Did you ever consider it at some point going into a future and kind of altering the script initially in the phases? Was there a time where you guys were like, oh, instead of going to the past, what if we went into a future dimension? Was that ever a discussion of it?
It's hard to think of ways of expressing what the future would look like that
I can't believe I'm going to say this. It was hard to find ways to express how the future would look to people, and remain this tone of feeling scary and unnerving and full of dread. That's how optimistic. That sounds really optimistic. Like horrors in the future. It's just hard because it's like, okay, your mind goes to like, okay, they go and there's like AI robots. It's like, that can be scary. It's harder. It's hard to pull off. Also,
really work on
really expensive.
Yeah.
And so we ended up with like, there is one time travel trip in the movie that there is some ambiguity as to whether it's the past or the future.
Yeah. There's also there is scientific backing for what we're talking about. Now, this is all science fiction, obviously, but one theory of time is it's within the block universe, which is that all things have already happened, or I'm sorry, all things exist simultaneously, as he was saying. But there is a offshoot of that theory that the past exists somewhere, the present is real, but the future is still just potential. In which case, Synchronic would not be any use to travel to the future.
One interesting aspect, how do you guys decide which stories or which dimensions they go to? Like, because that must have been, there's so much of history to pick apart. How did you guys come up on these exact sort of, handful of times and places that Anthony's character kind of goes to? Was that a deliberate discussion between you guys? Were you guys kind of trying to pick? Was there any other options on the table, basically, or was this kind of what you guys wanted from the start, picking these specific locations and times that he travels back to?
It's a balance of a whole bunch of things. One of them is balancing the fact that you're making a low budget movie. So it's don't be too ambitious with where he's going to end up. And then the much more important balance is like, what is it going to mean to Anthony's character going to this place? How does it affect him? How does it impact the story? And then the other thing is just like visually. Is it going to be interesting enough to put up on screen?
There's enough times, if you go back to the past in New Orleans, there's a whole bunch of times it's just going to be like swamp or forest, like, so you have to make some choices there about how to get out of just the forest, because that was probably the majority of what that would look like, or swamp. But so it's decently easy in that way to think like, well, a really long time ago or in the distant future, it is desert, and another long time ago was the Ice Age, and another long,
Was the location the same every time he goes back in time? Was it supposed to be New Orleans, or just kind of ambiguous location somewhere in a universe?
Oh yeah, it was always New Orleans. It was always just basically that exact spot he was in was always. But actually, I shouldn't always say New Orleans. As long as New Orleans, the land now known as
right. Yeah. There you go. The thing about this movie, that kind of struck me. This is really a movie about mortality, life, and relationships, with kind of an outside decoration of the whole, future and time travel. But the meat of this movie is like the mortality and life and relationships. Tell me how you guys kind of balance that story aspect, because really the characters, that's what it moves through, is these relations between these two friends, the potential death of one, the daughter, and over that landscape of the sci-fi of, obviously the time travel and this drug, which seems, if you boil down, secondary, in that aspect. Tell me about how you guys kind of decorated these life issues around this concept of, the time travel, futuristic, and the drug.
We try really hard not to separate out our character component from the genre film component, the sci-fi horror, or the conceptual drug component. And really, it would be hard to make a movie with one without the other. I suppose you can have a dying paramedic and his best friend, but that kind of ends at a certain act point. At a certain point, someone has to make a sacrifice or has to make a choice and all of that. And we do feel that they intrinsically one doesn't really exist without the other. There's many ways to tell this story, but you couldn't really just have one or the other. And it's because we think that it informs the other one. Is all the movies that we make are about a central relationship. all that we've made so far. There's a two-person central relationship, and so you find out early on how lived in this is and what condition the relationship is in, and then you put them through a test, and that test is going to be this sci-fi component. And that's how we did it. We wanted to talk about how a very old relationship was affected by time in both a thematic way and a very literal sci-fi way.
Mm-hmm. You know, the I don't want to give any spoilers, right? But I mean, I can make the note, but I need to talk about the ending because it obviously ties the story up in so many ways. But I ever wondered, was this Anthony, as soon as his characters, when he discovered a drug and obviously the cancer and stuff, was he ever going to kind of fight to live? It seems like he, in a lot of ways, wanted to just save his best friend's daughter and kind of, in a sense, walk away from life content. In a weird way, he was okay with his death. It seemed like inevitable in that sense. Was there any sort of different alternate ending you guys thought about, or where did you kind of visualize the story after the scene goes, fades to black? Where did you kind of foresee individually where the story could have gone to, or any other sort of extension, or even an alternate ending possibly?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's not really an alternate ending, but there's an ending that goes on longer and answers like a pretty big, let's just call it a plot question that we leave you with. Mm-hmm. There is a version of the movie that goes longer, but no matter which ending it is, the one that we landed on or the one that went a little longer, the way we saw it was like, well, the question is not whether Steve lived through this one event or not. And the stakes of the movie were never, is Steve gonna live or die? Steve has accepted that he's going to die. Even, I think if you were to ask Steve after this movie cuts to black, no matter what happened to him, even if he survived cancer, I think he still pretty much embraced that every human being dies. And that was his, that was his journey in the movie. And that was the journey we want the audience to go on. And whether in this one of his fate in this one event was less important than that thematic idea.
Interesting. So it folds with the narrative of the story too, because you kind of know early on that this person isn't fighting life or mortality or trying to live. He just wants to make the best of his moments that are left, basically, right? And that sort of sense. It's just an interesting journey right there. We're not, in a sense, shocked by it. We are given early on that once his diagnosis happens, he just wants to live out his purpose. And it was interesting thing too with a dog too. I mean, every time a dog like disappears or dies in a movie, it's like it pulls on your heartstrings. Was there another idea too? Because it's important to that character. The dog is his only kind of, partner in life in a sense, that's always by him. Kind of tell me about the dog and how did you guys want to tie in that aspect too? And when the dog disappears, it's just like, oh no, one of those moments.
Right. And the dog's what happens to the dog is not, it's meant to be sad for Steve, but not particularly sad for the dog, although it would be. It's a consequence of his relatively reckless actions here, right? He is still obviously doing all of this for a good purpose in order to save the daughter of his best friend, right. But still, one way or another, he can't just go to the past, run away from something, and then jump back to the present, and that's the end of it, and so he gets a consequence. But the reality is, Hawking. I'm just going to spoil this. Hawking was living in, maybe the lower 9th ward in a house with a owner that probably wasn't home a whole lot because he had a crazy job and crazy hours. Now he's running around the forest in the 30s before it's like super developed. He's chasing rabbits and stuff. And you know what? Do you remember that Guinness record about Hawking? He actually holds the Guinness record for the world's oldest dog. He lived to be like 50 years old.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So Hawking had a wonderful, wonderful life.
Well, that's pleasing to hear in that aspect. That's a great tidbit right there.
Yeah. yeah, Hawking was bored.
He raised a bunch of puppies.
Yeah.
He fell in love.
He's got so many progeny. Yeah. He might, you know what? Hawking might be one of his own puppies. We don't know.
Well, that's satisfactory in that sense. Finally, wanted to end. What are you guys seem like really creative individuals, and I like the fact that you're genuine, in a sense, artists and creative guys. What are some of the things that you guys like to do in your everyday life when you're maybe not working on scripts? What sort of things did you find as hobbies or interests?
Oh God.
Either one can start with that one.
Funny?
Well, you know what's funny between promoting the release of Synchronic and working on this new movie. I had to like really think about having things that we do that aren't movie making.
You're learning guitar.
I'm learning guitar and what actually one of my favorite things I've done that wasn't making movie last year was watching Damon Lindelof's The Watchmen.
Oh, yeah.
Blew my mind. That was just like I filled my heart. It was so goddamn good.
Yeah. We share a lot of these, but I really into meditating and French. I spend practicing French. I do that both every day, and then what's the fun one? I like I'm a gamer. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like we're talking video games, PS4.
Yeah. Video, all of them. I love them all. They're my release. Yeah.
Well, their PS5's on the way, so Aaron, get ready for that. Awesome, guys. Seriously, it's so cool to talk to you. I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it just had so many elements that were just interesting, and it takes you to another really dimension when you think about kind of the past and even your individual kind of everyday life to kind of maximize every day of it too. So and you guys really set it up at a great background and the story and everything. So I'm looking forward to the next project, whatever you guys are working on right now downstairs after this interview. I can't wait to see it, and hopefully you guys keep on producing some good, interesting stuff and creative stuff like that.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for checking it out.
Stay safe and healthy, and hopefully you get to catch on down the road on your next film.
Yep. All right.
Take care, fellas. Bye-bye.
The time is an illusion.